Imagine you are standing in this massive warehouse, and there are three giant heavy-duty sorting bins right in front of you.
Okay, I'm picturing it.
And you're holding this huge stack of labels in your hands, like thousands of them. And they represent every human thought, every discovery, every belief we have ever had.
That is a lot of labels.
Right. And the bins are just marked science, philosophy, and religion. Now, if someone asked you to sort those labels, you'd probably, breeze right through it.
Oh, for sure. I mean, microscopes and data, that goes in the science bin. Din's books about ethics, philosophy bin. Stained glass, prayer. That's the religion bin.
Exactly. We love doing this. We love our mental filing cabinets, right?
Yeah.
Because separating these disciplines gives us this false sense of mastery over how the universe actually works.
Yeah, we really rely on those categories just to keep from feeling totally overwhelmed by existence. I mean, if everything is neatly boxed up, we don't have to confront the vast, messy interconnectedness of reality.
But the source material we are looking at today completely dismantles those boxes. We are basically emptying those bins right onto the floor.
I love it. We are making a mess.
Today's deep dive is based on this truly remarkable transcript from the philosopher Alan Watts. It focuses on what he calls ways of liberation.
And our mission today isn't to just, read back his ideas. We want to truly understand his radical breakdown of how humans view the universe.
Right, we're going to examine three entirely different frameworks of reality: the monarchical, the dramatic, and the organic.
And by understanding the mechanics of how these models shape our daily lives, we might just find a way to, liberate ourselves from our own modern information overload.
But before we can even look at those frameworks, Watts argues we have to scrutinize the tools we use to build them. Like, we literally have to look at the mechanics of what we call thinking.
Yeah, and this starts by reclaiming a sense of wonder that, honestly, modern academia has largely just abandoned.
Watts illustrates this beautifully with a story from his childhood. He remembers wandering the streets of London near the British Museum and stumbling upon this really peculiar shop.
Right, the sign above the window.
Yeah, it read philosophical instruments, and as a kid, he was totally baffled by the concept. I mean, he walked up to the glass, probably expecting to see, I don't know, heavy leather-bound books or mystical artifacts.
But instead, the window was just full of chronometers and slide rules and scales.
Which completely shatters our modern categorization. I mean, today we treat philosophy as this purely abstract, linguistic exercise.
We really do. We forget that for centuries, science was simply called natural philosophy. Aristotle actually argued that the entire foundation of philosophy is wonder.
Wonder, I love that.
Yeah, it's just raw human curiosity attempting to make sense of our surroundings. The instruments in that window, they were tools born from that wonder.
But that sense of wonder is almost entirely missing from modern academic philosophy today. At least, according to a rather biting critique, Watts references from William Earle.
Oh yeah, the former philosophy professor.
Right. Earle pointed out that a modern academic philosopher is absolutely terrified of being edifying. They actively avoid staying awake at night, pondering the destiny of man or the nature of the universe.
Which is crazy because Earle noted those massive existential queries are just dismissed by modern academics as meaningless questions, simply because they can't be perfectly quantified.
Yeah, the modern philosopher basically treats the discipline like a corporate job. They arrive at the office at 9 a.m. in a business suit, manipulate logical puzzles until 5 p.m., go home to cocktails, and just, leave the universe at the office.
Earle actually joked that they would wear white lab coats to work if they could get away with it, just to borrow the authority of science.
Which is so funny, but they are trying to force the boundless universe into the rigid confines of linguistics and mathematical logic.
And this brings us to a massive limitation in human biology, specifically how Watts defines the actual act of thinking.
Right, let's unpack this. Because when he uses that word, he isn't talking about sensing the sun on your skin or, feeling the emotion of grief.
No, he specifically defines thinking as the manipulation of symbols.
Symbols like words and numbers.
Exactly. Words, numbers, triangles, even mythological dragons. These are all symbols. They are not the things themselves, right? They're just representations we use to categorize events in the real world.
Like the word water is not actually wet.
Bingo. Thinking is simply the internal process of moving those symbols around to map reality.
And Watts uses this brilliant analogy for this. He says, trying to understand the world purely by thinking is like trying to drink the Pacific Ocean out of a pint beer mug.
It's such a great image. That pint glass represents a fixed, rigid volume.
Yeah,
You can only take it in one drop at a time.
right.
Because thinking is a linear serial process. You have to think one word and then the next word in a single file line.
Right.
But the world you are trying to comprehend does not operate in a single file line.
Not at all. Your sensory processing is astronomically huge. Like right now, as you are listening to this, you are processing the ambient temperature, the hum of the refrigerator, the pull of gravity, complex visual data, and thousands of internal bodily functions simultaneously.
Your body experiences the ocean of reality all at once, right? But your conscious thinking mind is just frantically trying to scoop it up with that little pint glass.
It's just far too clumsy and slow a mechanism to process the totality of existence.
So since modern philosophy restricts itself to that little pint glass of logic, we naturally look for a bigger container to hold the ocean.
And typically we turn to religion for that.
We do. But Watts draws a massive distinction between Western religions and Eastern traditions like Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism.
Yeah, we casually group them all into the religion bin, but Watts argues the Eastern traditions are not actually religions in the Western sense of the word.
Right, if we look at the Latin root of religion religare, it basically means a bond or a rule of life.
It is fundamentally anchored in obedience. Think of a monk joining an order. They are submitting to a divinely revealed rulebook.
And Watts breaks this Western religious structure down into what he calls the 3 C's: creed, code, and cult.
Okay, let's go through those. First is the creed.
Yeah, the creed is the divinely revealed map of the universe. It's the absolute truth you have to believe.
And second is the code.
Right, the code is the absolute law or the exemplar you must follow, like the moral rules.
And third is the cult, which I know that word has a lot of baggage today.
It does, but in this context, the cult just refers to the specific authorized methods of worship, like sacraments or sacred rites.
We naturally crave these 3 C's because, let's face it, ambiguity is psychologically terrifying.
Oh, absolutely. An absolute revealed structure relieves us of the existential burden of figuring out the universe ourselves. It is a structure of comfort, disguised as a structure of authority.
Even the most beautiful expressions of this still rely on that structure. Watts quotes the German mystic Meister Eckhart, who said, "The love with which I love God is the same love wherewith God loves me."
That's a beautiful thought.
It is. Eckhart imagines becoming a hollow flute through which the divine breath plays. It's poetic, but, the flute is still an instrument being played by a separate, higher authority.
Which brings us perfectly to the first of the 3 frameworks of the universe Watts discusses, the monarchical model.
This is the bedrock of the Judeo-Christian tradition.
Yes, and it is entirely a political metaphor. The universe is envisioned as an ancient Near Eastern monarchy, where an absolute sovereign imposes his will upon his subjects from above.
And here's where it gets really interesting. That creates a wild cognitive dissonance in modern society. I mean, we live in a democratic republic. We champion the idea that authority should come from the ground up, from the people.
Right.
Yet we simultaneously hold a monarchical view of the universe. We believe the ultimate reality is a dictator imposing will from the top down.
It's a huge contradiction. And Watts argues this underlying worldview is exactly why our society possesses such a deep, anxious obsession with top-down law and order.
We're trying to run a democratic republic while secretly terrified that the cosmos operates as a dictatorship.
What's fascinating here is the historical baggage of this model. It's so heavy. When a congregation addresses the divine as the King of Kings, they're actually using a title borrowed from ancient Persian emperors like Cyrus the Great.
Wow, really?
Yeah, it is literally the language of ancient court flattery projected onto the cosmos. And the psychological consequence of this is profound. It creates a vast ontological gulf between you and the divine.
Ontological meaning the actual fundamental substance of your being.
Exactly. In this model, God is made of creator stuff, and you are made of subject stuff. You are an artifact made by the creator, much like a table made by a carpenter.
And the table can never become the carpenter.
Never. That gulf is permanent and unbridgeable.
So if that unbridgeable gap causes us so much anxiety, what happens if we reject the premise of the gap entirely?
Then we leave the Middle East and look to India, which introduces the second framework from the source material, the dramatic model.
Right. In the Hindu model, God is not an architect or a king standing outside the universe pulling levers. God is the actor.
Reality is a cosmic sage play, and the divine is playing all the parts simultaneously.
Everyone and everything is God in a mask, which Watts explores the etymology of the word person to explain this, and it totally blew my mind.
Oh, the persona thing.
Yes. Today, we use person to mean the authentic real you, but it derives from the Latin word persona, which originally referred to the physical masks worn by Greco-Roman actors.
Right, and those masks had those large megaphonic mouths so the actor could project their voice across an open-air theater.
Exactly. Persona, the sound comes through the mask.
There is a fascinating historical mistranslation tied to this, too. When early theologians tried to translate the Greek concept of the Holy Trinity into Latin, they used that word persona or mask.
But that wasn't the original word, right?
No, the original Greek word was hypostasis. And a much better way to understand hypostasis is to look at water. Ice, liquid water, and steam are three different states, or hypostases, of the exact same underlying chemical substance.
Okay, but hang on. If we are all the exact same underlying substance, why do I feel so disconnected? I mean, if I am the cosmic actor, why do I just feel like ordinary, anxious me stuck in traffic or stressing over paying taxes?
Well, because the entire point of a play is to get lost in the illusion. It is the ultimate game of cosmic hide and seek.
Hide and seek, I like that.
Watts provides two incredibly grounding analogies for why you cannot perceive this ultimate reality. First, he says you can't get at it for the exact same reason you physically cannot bite your own teeth.
Right, because the mechanism doing the biting can't turn around and bite itself.
Exactly. And second, you cannot look straight into your own eyes without a mirror. The ultimate reality is the center of everything. It's described as a circle whose center is everywhere and whose circumference is nowhere.
Which means you cannot observe the thing that is doing the observing.
Right. You are looking out from the absolute center, which means the center will always remain out of your field of vision.
That is honestly a paralyzing thought. You literally cannot observe the observer.
It takes a minute to wrap your head around.
So the monarchical universe gives us God as the king. The dramatic universe gives us God as the actor playing us all. But, I mean, even in a stage play, someone had to write the script, right? There is still a director.
True. But what if we remove the director completely? This takes us to China and the third perspective, the organic model.
In a universe that functions as an organism, there is no boss, there is no monarch, and there isn't even a central actor following a script.
This is the foundation of the Taoist view. The Tao, or Tao, translates to the course of nature. Lao Tzu wrote that the Tao flows everywhere to the left and the right.
It nourishes all things, but it does not lord it over them. It accomplishes the work, but lays no claim to the merit.
To truly grasp the organic model, we have to recognize how deeply conditioned we are by mechanistic thinking. In the West, we largely treat the human body like an automobile engine.
Yeah, if a part breaks, we just assume a mechanic needs to open the hood, unscrew the broken part, and drop in a replacement.
But biological organisms do not assemble themselves like machines.
No, like when a fetus is developing in the womb, there aren't tiny mechanics inside lugging a liver over to a stomach and bolting them together. The parts aren't manufactured separately and then assembled.
Right. The text explains that an organism develops all over at once. It emerges, like a crystal growing in a chemical solution, or an image slowly appearing on a photographic plate.
And because it emerges all at once from a single process, there is no top organ running the show.
Now, modern humans are desperately attached to top-down control, so we naturally assume our brain is the boss of our body. But Watts presents this argument about the stomach and the brain that completely upends this assumption.
Oh, this part is hilarious, but also a deeply humbling evolutionary perspective.
Right.
Because the stomach, well, the digestive tract is evolutionarily ancient compared to the human brain.
It really is. Life started as primitive little tube creatures that existed solely to take food in one end and push waste out the other.
Right, and over millions of years, that too evolved a ganglion, which is just a primitive cluster of nerves. That nerve cluster eventually evolved eyes, ears, and a complex brain.
And why? For the sole purpose of helping the stomach scrounge around the environment to find more food.
Exactly. So from an evolutionary standpoint, the brain isn't the boss. The brain is just the stomach's servant. It is literally an elaborate food-finding antenna.
I mean, of course, Watts notes you can flip that argument entirely. You could claim the stomach is merely the biological scaffolding required to eventually evolve a brain.
Oh, right.
You could argue the stomach's like John the Baptist, preparing the way, doing all the grunt work of digestion so that eventually the brain can compose symphonies, study science, and create culture.
But the underlying mechanism is that the argument itself is useless. You cannot have a stomach without a brain, and you cannot have a brain without a stomach.
They are completely interdependent, like the front and back of a coin. There is no hierarchy. There is no boss.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, This leads to the profound Chinese concept of zhuzhan, or ziran, which translates to what happens of itself.
Yes. Nature operates as an orderly anarchy. I mean, consider the mechanics of your own body right now. You do not consciously plan to have hiccups.
No, they just happen of themselves.
You do not consciously instruct your heart to beat. You can briefly take manual control of your breathing, sure, but the moment you get distracted, your lungs just breathe of themselves.
An orderly anarchy. The system runs flawlessly without a governor sitting in a control room.
It's beautiful when you think about it.
It really is. So we've outlined these three models. But we established earlier that these Eastern traditions aren't religions based on obedience. So how does this actually apply to your life?
Right.
I mean, if there's no creed to memorize and no absolute boss to obey, what is the practical function of these philosophies?
This raises an important question, and it's a vital pivot in the text. Because if you visit a Japanese Buddhist temple, from the outside, it operates with all the trappings of a Catholic church.
Yeah, you see incense, gongs, candles, statues, elaborate chanting.
Exactly. It looks exactly like the cult aspect of a monarchical religion. But the inner mechanism, the actual goal of the practice, is fundamentally different.
Watts suggests the closest Western equivalent to these Asian ways of life isn't religion at all, it is psychotherapy.
They share a common objective, altering your state of consciousness. However, the mechanisms and the targets are completely different. Psychotherapy is designed to fix problems that are peculiar to the individual.
Like your unique childhood trauma, or a specific phobia, or clinical depression.
Right. These Eastern disciplines, however, address a universal problem. They operate on the premise that the average human being is actively hallucinating a delusive sense of their own existence.
And Watts points out that the more civilized we become, the deeper this hallucination sets in.
We are entirely trapped in the illusion that we are nothing more than poor little me. We believe we are the persona, the megaphonic mask, and we have entirely forgotten the cosmic actor underneath.
We think we are the pint glass and we've forgotten the ocean.
Exactly.
So what does this all mean? Well, the Sanskrit root of the word Buddha literally means to awake. The entire function of these paths is to wake you up from that specific hallucination.
It is not about blind belief. It is a purely experimental approach to your own consciousness.
Watts actually compares it to going to an ophthalmologist. Like, if your vision is physically defective and you are seeing spots, you don't pray to the spots.
No, you go to an eye doctor who performs a physical intervention to correct your vision. Following these paths is essentially a correction of your psychic vision.
It moves the pursuit of understanding out of the abstract academic realm of 9-to-5 philosophy.
And it moves it out of the submissive, top-down realm of monarchical religion. It makes it a direct, personal experiment in changing how you perceive the mechanics of reality.
We have covered a massive amount of conceptual ground today. We started by recognizing the limitations of our thinking, dropping that pint glass of our linear, symbol-manipulating minds.
We examined the political tension and the ontological gulf of the monarchical universe.
And we peeked behind the theatrical masks of the dramatic universe to see the cosmic actor playing hide-and-seek.
Finally, we embraced the orderly anarchy of our own organic nature, where the stomach and the brain work in perfect, bossless harmony.
The takeaway here isn't to view this grand illusion, what the East calls Maya, as evil. The physical world is not a trap. Watts simply suggests you need to recognize the illusion for what it is.
Right, so you don't consume too much of it and give yourself spiritual and psychic indigestion.
No, nobody wants psychic indigestion.
It is entirely about enjoying the play while retaining the profound awareness that you are sitting in a theater.
Yes.
And to ground this massive philosophical shift, Watts offers one final, deeply personal exercise. And I really want you to try it right now. Hold your hand up in front of you. Now open your hand and close it.
Okay. Open. Close.
You know exactly how to execute that action perfectly. But if someone asked you to explain the precise physiological mechanics of what you just did, you couldn't do it.
No way.
You cannot translate the rapid firing of the synapses, the electrical signals traveling down your arm, the exact contraction of the tendons, and the complex chemical exchanges in your muscle fibers into a system of symbols.
You cannot capture the reality of your own hand in a pint glass of thinking.
Yet you do it flawlessly.
So the thought to ponder as you go about your day is this. If you possess such immense natural intelligence to operate the staggering complexity of your own body without consciously knowing how you do it, who or what is the I that is actually doing it?
Are you the mask or are you the vast, unnameable thing wearing it?
The next time you find yourself trying to force the universe into one of those neat little sorting bins of science, philosophy, or religion, just remember the orderly anarchy happening inside your own hand. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the labels and keep exploring the grand illusions of the world.